I tell people all the time, I quote Joe Rogan at every event. I say, comparison's the thief of joy.
Yes.
And I'm like, if you compare yourself to others, especially guys in our community, like I don't claim to be some awesome, I did like 13 deployments or whatever it was. I've been to Iraq, Afghanistan, Israel, North Africa. I've done, Palestine. I've done some things, but there's half of my people in my network have done way more rad things. They're way more accomplished with their military service, but it's not about that. Because some people, like a Goggins, people give him shit because he's only done one deployment. I'm like, maybe he didn't get the fucking chance to do it, guys. Like, he's not out there saying he's the baddest motherfucker, like Navy SEAL, most accredited,
Right.
killer, whatever, that thing is. He's just trying to inspire people. And if you compare yourself to others, man, you never get help. So when I heard him tell me the story, what it did for me, it had a massive impact because he was in the unit, something that I never did. And I'm like, okay, it's okay for me to get help, dude, because this guy's done it, and he's way more accomplished in the military circles than I ever had been. And so it just led me the opposite direction to actually, not be afraid to reach out to other organizations to get help for myself. Because I always thought I'm going to take that from someone else. If I get help, somebody who's done more, like I've got 2 veterans on staff that are amputees. One's a double amputee, one's a single amputee, broken backs, blind in one eye. Just wild stories, man. And I'm like, they look at me like I'm some kind of like stud, because you did this and you were in this group and you did these amount of deployments. But I'm like, dude, you might have only done one deployment, lose both legs. You didn't have the opportunity to go to do other things in life in that career field.
Let me ask you a question real quick. Alessi, maybe you can help me out here. Can you Google what percentage of the current U.S. population served or has served in the military?
5 million. That's what I'm going to go.
You're going to guess 5 million?
It's probably, it's such a small percentage,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it's something like, it's under 5 million.
I want to see what this is.
Are you talking about veterans?
Yeah, just in general. Any war, any era who's currently alive. That's all I want to know. Are we getting anything?
Yeah.
What do we got?
The share of the U.S. population with military experience has declined. In 1980, about 18% of U.S. adults were veterans, but all that share fell to 6% in 2022.
All right, so that's perfect
ish.
to make my point. So it's 5 or 6%.
And this 350 million people ish, somewhere around there. It's under 400 million, I think.
So this is where a civilian like me who hasn't served should be making this point more to guys like you and all the people who are within that community. The comparison that you speak of and the little like, oh, he did this or I didn't do that or maybe I shouldn't talk because he did this and I'm that. You guys are such a small percentage of society that in today's times, since, after Vietnam, elected to go do that and serve the country, not knowing where you were going to go, what you were going to have to see, what you were going to have to do. Obviously, there's some people who are insanely great warriors that kind of are the best of the best, but still, every person in there has done something that, like, I never did, Alessi never did, most people never did, to serve the country and protect the freedoms we have. And so I say this because when I see the military internally from the outside, when I see them having their little battles about, well, you didn't do this or you didn't do that, it kind of breaks my heart to see it because it's like you guys have such a special thing and such a special bond that brings you all together, and you shouldn't be more worried about who saw, how many legs fly off from an IED versus the other guy who didn't. It's a very and I'll use this word. It's ridiculous in some cases, and I've seen it. By the way, on a personal note, like I've seen the dark side of the military eating their own with my friend with my friend Joe Tedeye. What they put Joe Tedeye through for 8 years with no facts whatsoever was horrible.
They shouldn't do that, man, because it doesn't look, man. That's the point, when I do this, I don't like doing media just in general. I started doing it because I have to get the word out for Brothers Keeper Veterans Foundation, all the good we're doing, we're uniting communities. But I see it within our own community. Not only that, but I see that firsthand. And I'll give you a good example. Like I have this awesome dude so when people order merch offline, the guy that fulfills the order is my friend Dave. I hope he doesn't get upset with me for, I just love the guy. He's one of the nicest people I've met. And I just stumbled on him. I talked to a local military group. I said, hey, man, they had me speak to everybody. And these are all retired sergeant majors, people, some of our career, but there's about only 30 people there. And they had this book with 4 veterans in it. And I said, look, I'm running a nonprofit to help veterans that are struggling. And the way people can help today is just help us fund the organization this year. So when I can go to the biggest platforms that I can get in front of, I want to be very careful on my messaging because I don't want to break the machine. This year is it's our 3rd year in business. Next year, I want to be able to go on a platform and say, if you're a veteran, you come to BKVF. BKVF.org, just Google it, write help at, we got you from there. If you're strong enough to do that, we got you. But, with Dave's situation, this book had 4 people. One already committed suicide. I said, dude, I need to call these guys. They all live local to me. I want to be more involved in the local community. Previously, I've been a bit of a hermit. I didn't leave my house. I had a lot of social issues. I'd go to the gym, go to the grocery store, go to work, and then I'd come home. I didn't want to be around people whatsoever. And now that I'm coming outside of that with this, this amazing thing to kind of do good work, I bumped one of the 4 dudes was this guy. So I met him, talked to him. I said, bro, he goes, yeah, I played, he was 6'8". He's a white dude, I only say that because, you look at the NBA, a lot of tall dudes, whatever. I'm not trying to freaking stereotype. Don't freaking troll me for everything, man.
No one would have until
yeah,
you said
okay.
that.
I know now I'm just freaking highlighting it. But he's 6'8", 240 in high school, dude, right? So he plays college football, college basketball. He's like, I wasn't a very good athlete. Plays for Redskins for 2 years. Walked on. Yeah. I was like, well, you're a pretty good athlete. I was a really good athlete growing up, but I could never play college football, bro. For a lot of reasons, let alone the Redskins. He was like, well, they weren't very good at the time. Very self-deprecating. And it's part of one of the things, right? So I'm like, well, that's pretty rad. And then in 1993, he joins the military shortly after. Goes from Germany, he goes into Kuwait, push up. He was in satellite communications. Like, I wasn't really in the military. I'm like, you have no legs. You're in the club forever, bro. I put these guys on a pedestal. Yeah. And then they try to do that with me. And they're like, well, you were in, Special Forces, you were Green Beret, and you went on to work for the OGA and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, who cares, man? Like, it's not about that. I'm like, so I said, what, so I met him, took him to meet Keanu Reeves. I was kind of telling you before the podcast. Like,
this is the guy that met Keanu.
Yeah. So this was this year, awesome. A couple months ago. Well, we'll talk about that. So I said, well, dude, so I didn't know his complete story. He's in a wheelchair, right? He's a double amputee above the knee. And everything he does, because I can appreciate it, and almost losing my leg at the pelvis, like up, basically at the pelvis 3 times between MRSA, bone degradation, everything else. I was like, I can barely put my socks on myself sometimes, man. I'm in a lot of, my things don't work. So we're doing a meet and greet. My buddy's pulling security for Keanu. He was playing with Dog Star in Atlanta. It was a couple months ago. So I said, hey, man, I'd really like to take this guy. I mentioned it to him that I was going to do a meet and greet for a couple veterans. I only took him and my stepson, and because he happened to be home. And, he knew who John Wick was, right? I was like, finally, I'm not that old where you don't know. Like, I'm dropping like, hey, do you know who Humphrey Bogart is? Like, who? But so we drive down there. It was the first time I ever drove with a double amputee. I was terrified because I've driven with single amputees before, but he's basically had 2.
He's driving.
Dude, he's driving me in the car down to Atlanta from where I live. It's about an hour drive through traffic, dude. If you've ever been to Atlanta, close to the city, traffic's insane. Like when I was coming here, I was almost late because
he's driving with broomsticks.
Bro, basically, like the way I explain it is 2 broomsticks, one on gas, one on, and I'm like, man, you need to get a Tesla, son. Like, so he's like throttling, and I'm like, wow, this is wild, man. The things he has to do. I think amputees, don't quote me on this, but it's around 60% more energy is expended just doing normal everyday shit. Sure. Yeah. It's exhausting, dude. Yeah. And like you drop a pen, you can't pick it up. And I appreciate all those things. And that's why I want to help people, right? So I'm like, He goes, man, I'd love to get some stuff. He has 3 kids, 3 young ones. He's got 2 kids in the military that are older. And we're driving down there. And I didn't know his complete story. I still don't know the whole story because I don't want to pick a scab. So we're driving down there. My buddy, Keanu's doing like groups of 6 for photo ops. And I was like, with people you don't even know, I'm like, wow, that's kind of nerdy. Who's going to put that on? I don't know who this guy is and that girl in my photo with Keanu. So Keanu was an hour and 10 minutes late to perform, right? He's behind schedule. And I heard really good things. I've Google searched them. I don't give a shit about a celebrity. I'll never build an event around a celebrity because they're flaky, a lot of them. Mm-hmm. But if they're people that I think really care, hell yeah, I got time for that. I'd love to get them behind our organization to bring eyeballs, like everybody. John Wick, I know there's some people that didn't like the last one, whatever. I get it.
Bro.
Dude, he's fucking a really cool guy. And if you ever Google him, he has a really crazy story. He's been through a lot of tragedy himself. He's a good motherfucker is what I heard. So we're up there. He's like, man, I'd really like to get some stuff for my kids, sign for it. So he makes a hat, I gave him a little grief over it because he has an embroidery business. So it was a good alignment for us to do our merch. And he lives 20 minutes from me. And he loves being part of the company, And he's like, I feel like I'm on the team. I'm like, you are, motherfucker. You're on the team. You are fucking on the team. I love this guy. So everybody's done. My buddy's like, hey, he's behind. He's about an hour and 10, behind. But, I said, can you bring him to us? He's in a chair, man. We're up in the stadium at the concert. And nobody was there yet. So it was one-on-one. And Keanu comes up with the people from Dog Star. And I said, Dave, I got to ask you, man. I got to, what happened in 93, dude? Can you give me like a little bit more specifics? He's like, yeah, I was a sole survivor of an IED attempt in 1993 in North Iraq. We're put in satellite dishes. We got hit. And I lost both legs below the knee at the time. One was just hanging on by threads. The other one was gone. I was like, how the hell did you live back then? Because we didn't have TCCC like with tourniquets and things. The training that we now have is so advanced, even for dumb people like me. I'm like, I can throw a tourniquet on and plug holes.
They didn't have any of that?
Not as advanced as 2003 through 2020. It just kept,
because it was happening all the time.
That's why we had so many people lost in like Vietnam that could have lived.
Yeah.
They couldn't get the people quick enough. They didn't have the life-saving technology and training. So he's like, yeah, man. So people threw, tourniquets on, belt, basically whatever they could do. I was like, you're so lucky to be here, bro. So I tell Keanu. Keanu comes over. He makes him a hat. And he put Keanu on the back. That's what I gave him shit on. I'm like, dude, first of all, he's famous as fuck. Number one. And number two, he knows his name. Like, I was like, dude, that's so great. So, dude, he kind of like Keanu teared up, dude. Like, he spent about 40 minutes with us and was not rushing. Like, had most celebrities that are a lot of, I'll say more, the majority are going to be like, hey, dude, I got to go, because they get annoyed, it's annoying, dude, to have people coming after you and want autographs and like, they got a life too, man. Like, leave them the fuck alone. And that's why when they come to our event, they like working with special operations because we just let them, if they come to a shooting event, for instance, it's like they get treated like a normal person.
Yeah.
It's like hey, if you guys want to do photos, we'll do it at the end. Just leave them alone. Let them have fucking fun and be a human being. Mm-hmm. So super fucking good dude. Confirmed how awesome that guy was. And he took a bunch of photos and signed everything. And,
I've heard amazing things.
Super
about
guy.
him.
And Dave's just a super exceptional guy. Then he goes on to start a satellite communication company in Nashville, sells it for tens of millions of dollars, walks away with large sums, multi-million dollars, right? He spends it all trying to walk again. They made him 6'8". He fell off of it, his prosthetics in a bathroom. He got MRSA like I did. And luckily for me, I knew what it looked like from doing jiu-jitsu. That's the only reason I have this leg. I was one day from complete amputee.
Yeah.
And so I really identify with these guys, even though I'm not an amputee and I didn't have this happen in combat, to be clear.
I mean, you have like
I got titanium.
Yeah, full titanium. Yeah. Pretty close.
It looks like a dildo on one side and a knife on the other. I usually just say the knife, but then everyone's like, it kind of looks like a dildo, like in your hip joint. But that was a really cool event where, that's what I'm talking about is like, I only want to I live in this world of just, we're talking about geopolitics and all the things that are, I'm like, if I can grow the sphere of control, like, or sphere of influence, and unite the left, the right, gay, straight, transgender, all branches. We serve all branches, men and women. And I wanted to be clear because we have 4 special operations guys on our board of directors out of 5. We're all veterans.
Wow.
I chose that board strategically because they're good friends of mine. Most are career Green Berets, and one's from the unit.
Who's on the board?
So I got my buddy Rob Vaughn. I've known him for 28 years. He was basically a Green Beret for a large majority. Then he did 13 years in, kind of working for the other group at Bragg, and a really good dude, very humble guy, very quiet, and he's been injured several times, shot several times. Doesn't really ever talk about that type of service because he's that guy, quiet professional. Probably going to get mad at me for this. And then Andy Lang, he's 25-year Green Beret, mostly spent in 5th Group at Fort Campbell. He owns a Leatherwood distillery, true patriot, good guy, equal opportunity kind of. He just says whatever comes to mind. He's a great dude, does a lot for us through his contacts with, like, he's friends with, like, Kid Rocks of the world and Seether, Sean, and just because of the Nashville scene, he opens a lot of doors for us. Then my buddy Ron Griffin, who ended up saving my life, my first suicide attempt, he worked for me in SF, brought me into OGA. He was working overseas, brought me in. Then he founded Indigent Armor Vehicle Company, which I ended up becoming the general manager of. We sold that for $35 million in 4 years. And then we transitioned from that. He went on to a Christian, he runs Shepherd Fold Ranch out in Oklahoma, helping kids through his nonprofit. He's been doing that for about 12, 13
Got
years.
some great people on there.
Yeah, and he went there as a kid. His mom died of cancer, and he went to that camp as a child. So when he got out of the fray of all this nonsense, he wanted to give back like we do. And he has that nonprofit experience he brings to the table. Then I have Dave Benar, was Army dude, short kind of career there, but then he's a business guy. And he worked with me at Jankel Tactical Systems, closed about probably $100 million in that time period. So he's got a good business mind, good strategy. So they're people that I trust to keep the business on the right trajectory. So, like next week, I was in between 2 events when I came out here. That's why I was rushing. And I'm doing a golf fundraiser. So I was saying, like, I want to bring eyeballs doing crazy stuff. I found a 5-time world champion trick shot artist, right? I do not golf.
Trick shot artist.
Yeah. So I don't even know, like, set world records and things like that. I think he was on the PGA, possibly. Rocky Shipes. So
Pull him up and see what he can do.
Yeah, look up him. He's going to do, when I like to connect at our events. The biggest thing to me is I want to build relationships, not just shake people down for their hard-earned money. I want people to come out and see firsthand the men and women that serve the country, that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. That some people come that are struggling, but I'm trying to get more involvement on the corporate side, the big name people, for like our gala in September.
Yeah, absolutely. You need that. Hey guys, if you have a second, please be sure to share this episode around on social media and with your friends, whether it's Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, doesn't matter. It's all a huge help. It gets new eyeballs on the show, and it allows us to grow and survive. So thank you to all of you who have already been doing that, and thank you to all of you who are going to do so now.
Yeah, so he does this trick shot. Look up Rocky Shipes ball shot.
Ball shot?
Yeah, he's actually, when I open up, he's going to drive a 300-yard, I don't know if it's 300 yards, but he's an exceptional driver, kind of like a John Daly. I tried to get him to come out, but he was tied up.
A little lawn dart John?
Yeah, I met him last year briefly, and I got his contact details.
Does he remember you?
Probably not.
Yeah,
He might have had a few, dude. He might have been on a couple things.
Oh, no.
Look, dude.
No.
So I don't know if your audience could see that, but this is what he's going to do to me. And my wife is not.
No. No.
Yes, bro.
You need that thing working. That's one of the things
I've been doing MMA, man. I used to wear a steel cup in Muay Thai, bro. And this is Monday. That's happening to me. And this gentleman agreed to come. He's not charging us. He's coming. He's a patriot, not a veteran. Freaking great dude, man. And he's also making us these wood signs for first, second place. He has a woodworking business. Bro, what we're doing for the gala, you're going to dig this. So I have a SF guy who has material from the World Trade Center at his house, right?
What do you mean material from the World
like
Trade Center?
from the debris. I know, gosh, it sounds cringy when I say it like that. But they do things for like organizations like us. He's a patriot. He's a 5th Group Special Forces guy. I'm not going to drop his name, but he also has in Arizona. He has material from the actual Statue of Liberty. So the president of Troy.
Did you steal that off the?
I don't know. He's a firefighter.
Take a little chisel right off old Lady Liberty.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble for this or get him canceled. But basically, what we're gonna do is to raise money at the gala. I'm gonna have an MK11's being donated. It's about retails for about $8,000. It's a sniper rifle,
Yeah.
right? So Troy Arms has agreed to put that up for free for us.
Shout out Troy.
Yeah, fucking great guy, man. He just came to the salute and shoot and really supported us. I just met him recently. Fucking great company. He was like FaceTiming me the day before the event last week, and it was like thousands of square feet, this arms room. And he's like, what do you want us to bring to the event to support you guys? And I was like, holy cow.
That's awesome.
I was just like in love. I was like, man, can I come over? He's like, yeah, how about a Thompson submachine
You
gun?
up?
I was like, yes. He's like, how about a Sten? Like, I'm like, yes. So he brought out a lot of suppressed sniper rifles. He's like, we're going to donate one. The last one went for auction about $17,000. And I got this other guy. I said, can you embed material from the World Trade Center into the rifle in a dog tag? They're going to melt it down and somehow they're going to put it into the rifle. And that means a lot, right? Like, I don't care about the rifle. And so my idea is to have Rocky make a wood flag. He has a tribute to 9/11, which has the World Trade Centers in it. And I want to use some of the actual material and then also incorporate the Statue of Liberty. And I wish I could afford this for myself. I don't make money from the nonprofit. I don't take any salary. I never will, because there's other nonprofits that have missed that. We're not the best on paper yet because we're new. I'm kind of doing every dollar that we get donated either goes into growing the business, or on veteran services. So unfortunately, got to play this 990 game, and so I'm focused now on making. That's how people evaluate you, is your 990s. That's one of the ways they can kind of take a look at you. How are you spending your money? How many cents per dollar is going to veteran care?
That's right.
And I love that part, but there's a lot of gamesmanship. I'm not about that. I have everything I do, all I care about. I'm at the end of my life. I don't want to be ever perceived as doing something inappropriate because I don't have time to fix my reputation in life. It means the most to me, is being known as a good dude trying to do good things. And that's part of the legacy. It's not about me or getting notoriety or money. Like, I'm clearly not doing this for money. I'm on Social Security because I'm terminally ill. I'm taking my own money to fund myself, which isn't a lot. But it's the coolest thing, man, I've ever done. But Rocky, if we do that for the gala, I was like, dude, how cool would it be to have in your office just talk about Americana, the Statue of Liberty? That it's just a part of American culture and immigration. The things we're talking about, dude, I just tied it in the manhunt again. And then the World Trade Center, which was a pivotal part of my life. And, dude, I know all the people are like, well, I'm not look, somebody just called a guy a warmonger the other day who's a double amputee. He's missing. I just worked out with him Friday. He's coming to our golf event. Really,
why'd they call him a warmonger?
Because he's an amputee. Like, oh, you like war? It's like, dude,
because he's an amputee.
Do you think I
that.
There's these weird people out there. I'm like, you think that guy is, dude? I hate war. Like, it's necessary at certain times. I'm not saying, look, you can get into all the politics of 9/11. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about our freedom is critical, and sometimes war it's been culturally around for millennia.
It's been around forever. It's been around as long as humans have been
those
around.
People can go fuck themselves.
Well, you talk about that.
I do not like war.
you talk about that. You don't.
But I will fight.
Exactly. So there's something there where it's like you get the adrenaline from it, but the idea of having to bring the army in as a unit, and the military itself is a terrifyingly torturous endeavor because you're going to bring death with it. That's how war
Hey, man.
works.
Hey, good people do bad things, and that's the absurdity of war that we were talking about earlier. That's the complexity with the situation. Like, hey, man, if the nation ever needs even a cripple like me now, dude, I'm all about maintaining our freedom. I know some past wars, if you look at Vietnam, at post 9/11, people have all these different, I get it now.
Yes.
But at the time, being a young man, I'll do whatever I have to do for people's freedom. Like, that's at my core essence of like why I love this country. Even though it's burning right now, it is a bit of a dumpster fire. You need people. You need the people to be able to defend those liberties when the time comes.
Yeah.
In the future, if the Constitution's at jeopardy, our liberty and freedoms, I just believe people should be able to speak their mind, whether I agree with their position or not. I always use Colin Kaepernick. You remember the taking a knee?
Yeah.
Like everybody.
Yeah.
So people ask me, how do you feel about that? I'm like, yeah, dude, like I have my own thought process on it. But it comes down to he should have the freedom to do that. I think he muddled the message of whatever his agenda was, whether that was BLM or whatever. Dude, you have $100 million. You're playing football. You got a 5-year contract, whatever it was. I think it was $100 million.
He made a lot of money, whatever it was. He made a lot of money.
You could have gone on the biggest platform in the country, and you could have taken a Super Bowl ad out and been very clear in directing your message and not coming across like you're disrespectful to the country, the flag, and the veteran community. That's where I have a problem. But it's his freedom to do that, whether I agree with it or not. And I think people should be able to. The problem with social media right now is there's a very small demographic that's making the most noise, and the people, the moderates in the middle, feel like they're terrified. Right. I don't want to lose my job.
That's right.
I don't want to get canceled.
People are always trying to pull you in different directions, and that's like one of the only places in my life where I truly feel at peace with myself at this point, because I've been on that trajectory when I was younger, being pulled in every which direction, and now I can just kind of see through it. But I fully understand, having been in that myself, how people can't and what these algorithms do. And like sometimes I'll say to somebody, like we'll be out at the bar or something, I'll be like, yo, pull up your Instagram or pull up your Twitter, and I'll just have them go like this slowly on their algorithm. I just want to know what it looks like. I want to see what they're being fed every day, especially when I hear them talking about certain things. I'd love to know like where they're getting that, and then I see it. And it goes back to what you were saying about the social dilemma. It's just programming on people. And actually, as a veteran and someone who did so many tours, and I do want to set the deck here at some point. We'll get to it. You've been mentioning some of the things that we talked about in episodes 136 and 137 when you were here in December 2022. I think we put out that episode.
You made me cry in one of those, man. What's up?
Yeah. It was a hell of a sit down that day, and what that was. But like, we'll go through, fill in some of the blanks of your backstory. But for now, obviously, like you mentioned, you did a lot of different tours in a lot of places for many years. You worked in the Special Forces, and then you were even a GRS contractor for the CIA, which is in the Special Forces capacity, essentially. And you've seen a lot of shit, so you can speak to these different wars and what it's like on the ground, and what about it is necessary and what about it in hindsight is unnecessary. But right now, we're at an interesting point where we see something that's not politicized. It actually is different camps in both sides of the aisle, and that is you have people who are left or right, doesn't matter. There are subcategories within each where people are either isolationist or they're like hardcore pro military industrial complex. And I live in a world in the middle of those two things. I think having a military industrial complex where all these companies are fucking funding the politicians so they can create wars and have proxy wars, I think that's a very bad idea because I think war is something that should be a last resort scenario. I also know, because I study history, that isolationism never ends well. There is no point where, people were saying, oh, let's withdraw from the world and not do shit, where that ends well. Case in point, by the way, World War II. That could have been avoided if we hadn't had that attitude, but we were forced to have that attitude because Franklin Delano Roosevelt's opponent in the 1940 election was a hardcore rabid isolationist at a time where the country was supporting that. So we didn't get involved while Britain was getting the shit kicked out of them with bombs and stuff, and Hitler continued to go west and then eventually even east, and then the Soviets. You get my point, right? I can go through this over and over again in history, but as someone who's lived it, as someone who's seen it on the ground in every direction, between war itself, things that look like proxy wars, or things being funded through the government, how do you go about this conversation with people to make them realize reality, but also understand, there is a time where it's necessary, and, sometimes that is going to be the thing.
Well, I think the problem in our culture today is those lines get blurred, right? Unless you're really tuned in. And when you're taking people at a certain age, especially people right out of myself, right out of high school, I was a young guy, wasn't super educated at the time, you're very impressionable at that age.
Yes.
And so I have a 20-year-old in the military right now, and hearing him talk, as an infantry guy, is a little interesting because I've been there and I know how he's thinking and the things that he should be thinking about. What I'm telling him now is you need to be a little bit more informed on geopolitics, man. One, you get a little bit more of a heads up of things to come, and also the severity of the job that you're potentially going to perform in combat. So if I was him at 20 years old, now with my mentality is you got to take training very serious. The guys on left and right of you, the reason we're so bonded is because you get to know people at their essence, man. Because, I use an example all the time. I know I'm not really answering your question straight up, but
no, I see where you're going.
When you go to a bar, right, everybody has been, is probably tuning in, has been to a bar, and your friend, you kind of in that bar fight situation. I'm going to kick that guy's ass, right? And you're like, dude, I've known this guy, but have you ever seen him in a fight? And maybe you haven't. So the words don't really carry a lot of weight. In the circles that I run in, even to this day, if somebody says they're going to kill somebody, I'm like, holy shit, this might be really serious, dude. Or I'm going to kill myself, or I'm going to kick the shit out of somebody. When you're in these situations that are so absurd in a combat setting, and you've seen these guys actually enact violence in, any means necessary type of situation, when you leave the service, those words actually hold weight and water, and there's a huge difference. And because you've been in the most crazy situations, so you get to know people, those individuals more. It's not about the bravado at times. It's you actually know what somebody's truly about at the core. And because you're in the most unique situations that never can be replicated in civilian life, it's just very rare sometimes, but usually you'll end up in prison, for doing something that in combat might be a day-to-day activity.
That's right.
And that's why I think our community is so tight. I've told people when my buddy John Zinn, he was a Navy SEAL, passed away, it was in business setting, right? But I was his partner in Iraq, right? We were in some crazy situations, and I knew what he was about, and he knew what I was about. And losing him when his wife was 9 months pregnant and having to knock on our door, this really had a profound impact on me.
You laid out that story.
Yeah, I mean, he was just young, he's 32 years old. But it was kind of when you're running with those circles in business, it's what people are really about. And I think that's just one facet of the whole conversation is the unique bond that people have. I'm closer with some of the people than I'd ever would be with my family, because once you get out of the house, you're kind of calling your parents. You're just, you know, it's your formative years, but as an adult, you're kind of a little bit more distant. So yeah, it's just, war, unfortunately, should be fortunately should be a last result. I agree with you 100% on that, but at times it's going to be necessary, you know. And when those times come, you know, you got to make these moral decisions, and those lines get blurred quite a bit.
Hold on
Yeah.
one sec. Let's just pause and go to the bathroom so this asshole outside
Yeah,
can turn his fucking
fucking
car off. We'll be
douchebag.
right back. I want to touch on that point. All right, we're back. The soundproofing in here, we spent a lot of time on. It came out really, really good. But, like, if there's an ambulance right outside the window or someone with their fucking car going off like that, there's really nothing I can do. So we just got to pause on that. But we're talking about this whole concept of, you know, going down the rabbit hole of being in the middle of either, war, or no war at all in any cases. And you just touched on it at the very end of that last point where you were saying, like, yeah, it is a last resort, but it's a resort. It's something that does have to be used. I understand some of the anger of the, say, isolationist crowd right now when they look at all the money, though, that is going to wars where we don't necessarily have our boots on the ground, right? It's going into Ukraine. It's going into fucking Israel, right? And it's all these bills are being passed for billions of dollars.
Hundreds of billions.
Right.
Like that.
While people here, you know, the middle class is dwindling. There's a greater and greater wealth gap. There's people who are struggling to have families and pay their bills. And I understand when they see all this money going out and they're like, what the fuck is this for? So how do you curb maybe the righteous anger of people like that to say, yes, on these cases, you got a point. Like, we probably shouldn't be spending this much money and we need to figure out a way at peace. But, like, in the future, if some shit went down or something and we had to get involved, you guys got to be ready to support that if it's really at that last resort type situation.
Well, I think it comes down to politics, unfortunately, which I don't ever like to talk about. Like I said, you know, my goal is to unify people and things like that. However, I think people really, need to be doing a better job when it comes to looking at the representatives. You know, the government works for us. That's the model. Unfortunately, everybody, you know, in politics seems to have it backwards.
Yeah.
You know, we elect officials to run the country, and people need to be doing a little bit more due diligence, spending more time, because what happens in and I've been victim of it myself in the past as a young guy. If you go across the line, maybe those people don't represent your beliefs, your wants and needs. And if you just go straight down the line, maybe those people aren't as aligned with what your belief system is or the way that you want to see the country go. That's number one. I don't know, you know, is doing due diligence, actually taking the time to get out and vote, and especially local stuff. Like, you know, everyone's busy, man. There's some times where I haven't voted, you know, for local elections, and I don't even know who my representatives are in my state. That's important. But then you go up to the federal level, you know, we don't have good options. Look at the elections right now. You know, we're stuck with the same types of people. That one's a hard one for me to kind of weigh in on, as far as what's the fix for that, to get better representatives for us to represent this country that would be more making better decisions. Because part of me is an isolationist in the sense of, we're a nation of laws. We need to take care of the people in this country because we have a great country.
Sure.
When we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on other causes, and that's why I'm trying to combat, you know, raise awareness and destigmatize veterans' mental health, because the federal institutions that are supposed to be doing this are not doing a very good job. Therefore, we need private institutions or nonprofits to come in and firm that up. And it's out of necessity. It's not, you know, they're just failing. The VA, they do some good things well. I try not to just slam on the VA, but if you talk to any veteran that's been through it, like myself, there's a lot of things. Why is that money, $100 billion, goes over into Ukraine, another $100 billion, another one, you know, Israel. You go across the board, that's an absurd amount of money that could be going here into our country to do better things. So it's a complex, situation when it comes to the solution. But I mean, it starts with, people being informed, doing due diligence, actually going out and vote, because a lot of people don't do that. I mean, I'd be very curious on what percentage of this country is actually taking the time to go out, you know, to kind of weigh
Yeah.
in. I don't know.
Yeah, I make sure I go do it. And there was one election I talked about it on a podcast with John Lebecki back in episode 114. But there was one election I on purpose did not vote in, and he actually had a really good argument that changed my opinion on even that, like where that was like a protest, like not voting, because he had lived through something that you probably saw a little bit as well up close in some of your deployments, but he lived through like when the Iraqis got their voting rights back and what a big deal that was. And he's like, I don't give a fuck who you vote for. Go in and vote none of the above. And when he said that, he's like, there's nothing wrong with writing that in. And that's actually like what I've been doing. But I do think when it comes to local elections, it gets a little tough because, people, including myself, we do have lives. We got things to worry about and shit. I'd be lying if I told you I could name my fucking alderman. I don't even know what an alderman is. The way I look at that is, like, I go outside in Hoboken. The streets are clean. Every time I see a little problem, like I remember last fall, I started seeing on my walk on Sinatra Drive, there would be rats going across from one side of the cement towards the river by the trash. I was like, ooh, starting to get a lot. And the next thing I know, I don't know who the fuck did it. I don't know what politicians were responsible, but there was like a thing in Hoboken where you reported the rats or whatever, and they were gone. Like I literally haven't seen them since. I'm sure there's a few out there. But like when I see stuff like that, I'm like, okay, whoever the fuck is in charge right now, they're doing a good enough job. I don't know who it is. I'm not going to worry about it. That said, like if I went out there and shit was falling apart and there were problems, yes, I would probably take the time to learn who my people are and go vote for someone who could do a better job. So I think there's a balance there. But when it comes to our government and the people who are legislating at the top end, especially on a national level or at the top of the state level, like governors, stuff like that, I think you're right. There's a responsibility for most of us to try to take the time to at least know some basics on like what they're doing. And if there's an option on there that you think is best, that most closely aligns to what you think your priorities are, vote for them.
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm not an expert in the field, right? So I try not to kind of weigh in too much because if I don't have a solution, I don't like to complain about the issue. But there's several issues that are things that everybody, even that's listening, can do and make changes, right? Like one, man, you're getting me on the hot button topics, but
there's nothing hot button about this. You're fine.
One is, if you look, the things that concern me is the slow burn. You ever see that 1984 interview with the was it KGB? I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
I should know his name.
I always forget his goddamn name.
I've watched it several times.
We will beat America from the bottom, and they will slap it or whatever the fuck he said.
That was kind of man, nailed it. And I think there's been, that strategy. One of my concerns is with is the education system. I think we touched on it a little bit with colleges is a good example.
Yeah.
I think, colleges should be a place where young men and women coming out of high school learn to sit across the table and become critical thinkers for themselves, not being indoctrinated to some nonsense to kind of pollute their minds. They need to be free thinkers, man. Free thinking and critical thinking is a skill set that everybody can work on that's listening to this. And that drives, better candidates and things like that, because you're thinking for yourself on whatever the topics are in the world and potential solutions for them as well, because you're thinking outside the box, as a problem solver. So that's something that everybody that's tuning in can actually do is like, dude, be open-minded and learn as much as you can and be a sponge when it comes to and it's hard because everything that we're force-fed when it comes to media, and like we're talking about Manhunt, like it's hard to know what's real and what's not real because they have to sensationalize things for people to tune in.
That's
because
right.
People's attention spans are like gnats. We went from Facebook and then, which is more typing and content, and then that got all political. Then they went to Instagram, and then now TikTok, where you have 8 seconds to hook somebody.
Yeah, less than that.
They're like, I can't sit through this podcast. A podcast, holy shit! I don't know how people make. We're talking about Sean Ryan has a good platform. I love some of the
awesome stuff.
The content that he puts out, but some of those podcasts are 4-5 hours. Like, who's tuning in? Like, I will sit through that because I learn a lot of stuff about people, their experiences, maybe some good takeaways that I can apply in life. The second thing that I think people can change, which has been talked about, is the demasculization of men in the country. Like, it's very interesting to me because, like, I've told some people before when I was growing up, look at, when it comes to relationships and having an ability to communicate to somebody else about your thought processes. So you have the critical thinking skills that should be getting taught. They're not there. But young men that are coming up now, you need to get the fuck after it, dude. Like, who wants to be, and that's what I was talking a little bit about Nick Lavery, anybody can be average. You can sleep in till 3:00 in the afternoon on a Saturday. That's great. But you got to challenge yourself to grow. Like I was talking about earlier, it's like you got to suffer a little bit to do exceptional things. Who the fuck wants to be average? Everybody wants not to be average, but if you're sitting on a gaming station for 30 hours a day, you're not educating yourself. You're not going to the gym and working on your body, your mind, your soul. And, those things are in your spirituality too, like those facets of life. It's not a lot of things, but you got to put some effort into those and get after it. And it comes down to relationships with women, for example. Like, there's all these studies on young men coming up now. And what I see is like, they can't have a conversation with women. Back in the day, you have to have game, right? Well, it started with like pornography, right? It's thrown, like, you got Pornhub and all the things. Now guys are like, oh shit. OnlyFans, these influencers are making, some of them, absurd amounts of money, like $100,000 a day.
It's crazy.
Well, that means there's a lot of people tuning into it, and then they're not giving that attention to their girlfriend, their spouse, and young men, across the board are getting kind of polluted by the tech and all the other things, and life's a lot easier. But when I was a young guy, you had to sneak into an attic and get like a Playboy and trade it, right? And then it transferred to that. You go to the bars and you'd have to actually, care about how you looked physically. You also had to have a brain and carry a conversation with a young lady that you're talking to or whatever your thing is. And you sit there and you're trying to there was a competition. It was like all your boys, there was a competition to who's going to get the girl. Now it's like guys just jump on, porn as a young age, and it pollutes your mind.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're older, you understand that that's not real life, but you have these expectations of women that aren't really, that might not be a real cross section of reality. And that whole area concerns me too, because that's your fighting force too, It's
what do you think caused that?
I think it's a combination. We hit. I was listening to a lot of things. Another area that concerns me is AI. I listened to Rogan's podcast, whether that was Sam Altman, one of the creators of ChatGPT, which I use for business, but I'm not a big fan of AI. I know, dude. Watch Terminator, man. Skynet's real, right? Like, dude, you guys watch Terminator, and we're doing it right now. It's like there's so many different things with AI that are concerning, but it's coming, the genie's out of the bottle. And same with social media, like the algorithms we talked about, the social dilemma. There's all these different things. I also listened to one recently.
Kurzweil?
Yeah, and there was 3. Sam Altman. And then there was a guy who's been working on AI for 60 years.
Kurzweil.
Yeah, that one was just mind-blowing because you got these nerds just focused on one thing. Like, this guy wants to live forever. He's like 70 years old.
He's like drinking fucking almond milk to stay alive.
Yeah, and he's just like, who doesn't want to live forever and be the smartest guy? If you're a million times smarter, everybody wants that. I'm like, yeah, I understand some of that. I'm terminally ill. I don't want to live forever. Like, yeah, sure, it would be great. I want to live I want a quality of life over a quantity of life is important to me. But what you are as a human being is also, a concern with AI. And they're talking about exponential growth. You know, if you take 10,000 year cross section of humanity, right, just 10,000 years, it's like a straight line curve. And then you hit 1960 when you get the advancements of computer technology, the curve's going straight up, and you're going to have exponential growth at some point where it's just going to change. They're talking about 2029, what that's going to look like from today.
It's too far, yeah.
It's year over year, all these things, but it's impacting people's behavior and how you do business. And
the reliance on tech, you're saying?
yeah, you're kind of relying on it. And it's like whenever you hear the biblical quote, like the meek shall inherit the earth, initially I was thinking how that might apply to Silicon Valley and, you know, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world having billions of dollars. They're kind of meek guys, and they have
he's a big jujitsu guy.
now he's doing
fucking
jujitsu.
kicking
So
it
I'm
around.
like, okay, let me transfer. Now he's gonna go fight like in the UFC. I'm like, that's so fucking
someone
funny.
said he's encountering every stage of a growing young man about 20 years late or something like that.
But then you look at Mike Tyson, man. I was so bummed out with the Mike Tyson. I'm just jumping all over the place. I have ADD.
That's all right.
But he's not a 8-year-old. Unfortunately, it looks like it's getting canceled now because he had that ulcer. I don't know if it was real ulcer, but
Yeah, something's going on.
you know, originally I was like, man, I don't really want to see that. That's you know, the elder abuse type thing. Like you take this champion but I'm like, yo, with all the hormones and things that he's taking right now, he's not your typical 58-year-old
No.
dude. And I know he's just hitting pads. I follow the fight game, but that one was kind of, things are just weird, you know, like things that 20 years ago could never happen. You're not going to see a 58-year-old former world champion like Muhammad Ali, you know, bad example, but
It's like we're moving forward and backwards at the
yeah.
same time.
I agree with that. And you know, with all the things that you're kind of, you know, kind of talking about the absurdities of war and things that are really strange is like, I don't know if you ever take the human element out of it. We're more reliant on tech that is, you know, it doesn't have the same repercussions. You know, if you looked at war 200 years ago, it was very up close
yeah.
and very personal. Yeah. Like you were
bayonets right in
hand to hand. Even World War I trench warfare is very different than asymmetrical warfare. And you get into using, like now we're using drones to strike. The human impact might be different. And the more removed you are from humanity, that's a whole nother challenge that comes with the advancement of, could be AI, could be tech, because you're not seeing, you know, firsthand the atrocities of war. And
yet you have more access to seeing it secondhand online than ever before, in a way almost to desensitize yourself to it.
Yeah, when I first saw ogrish.com when that came out, I was trying to see if I could find my own IED, one of the IEDs I got hit with, to see if it was like posted by the people that, you know, Hezbollah, that tried to, you missed me, bitch. Well, you got me, but you didn't get me. You know, I was looking at that and I was like, dude, you start seeing all the content. And I don't know that that's good. And a lot of the first shooter games that came out.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason behind some of that. I know for certain that some of it was designed, you know, the first shooter games was the kind of, you're getting young men and women kind of in the mindset that applies to the military. There were some incubators that, you know, put some of that stuff out there for a certain reason. But yeah, it's very complex, man, especially when you talk about politics today. And yeah, I don't like what I see. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, we got into this talking about the lack of masculine nature that is kind of a problem with young men these days, and you righteously brought up technology and what that is, and obviously AI is like the ultimate dawn of things where we're losing potentially our humanity, and it has a lot of potential good to it too. We got to figure out how to harness that. But when you look around, I look at like generational examples, and I find myself more and more, you know, like my life is making content and watching things back and, you know, editing things and whatever. And like, that means when I'm not working, I'm trying to get the fuck away from that. At best, I'm throwing in AirPods and listening to like an audiobook or something. You know where my phone is? It's in my pocket. I'm not looking at it. But when I go to places where there's a lot of people and I look around, I always look for parents before kids because I want to see what the parents are doing. And every fucking time, without fail, just like this, baby. And it makes me think because one of my heroes is Steve Jobs. He was a very imperfect guy, but he was a real genius and someone who did some incredible things for the world. But I really do wonder what he would think if he were around today. And knowing how he was very outspoken, I'm sure he probably would be. You know, when he looks around and sees that like people are using what he was creating as a simple technology to make things easier as a crutch at all times. And I think when, you know, you're constantly grabbing that dopamine hit.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It comes down to dopamine, but I think the technology is advancing quicker than the way that we can kind of process it. I think that's, and yeah, it's a bit on the capitalist side. You know, you want to develop a technology that might make life easier, communication. Maybe Steve Jobs was thinking, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you could carry around and be able to talk to your family? Same with Zuckerberg when he created Facebook. You know, I watched that documentary on him, and that was another one where he didn't know how big that was going to get. No. And that technology now is fueling, you know, like we said, it's like that engagement is fueled by anger. That wasn't his initial, you know, no. I don't think they figured that out straight away, but they had to monetize it. And when you monetize it, the genie's out of the bottle. So it's kind of like this, you know, I think all tech's going that direction right now. It's faster than we can understand the human impact of the tech. And that's the part that scares me, man, is, yeah, I'm like, there's arguments now whether AI is salient, and I'm like, whoa, dude.
Sentient?
Yeah, or sentient, sorry. Yeah, I'm like, that's a little concerning.
I think if I had gun to my head, I don't fucking know, but I would say it probably is.
That's what it sounded
how far
like,
ahead the technology is that we know some of like the deep government has.
And whoever gets that tech first reality is going to be the czar, you know. Like, you know, Elon Musk recently did the Neuralink, which they actually, the next generation of that is what terrifies me. You're going to have a bigger problem when you have an iPhone in your brain, you know, in your million time.
Now I have the same fear, but I wrestle with this one too, because I'm like, will we, if it means that our heads are up and our eyes are in front of us, maybe we have a bit of a distraction because we can turn on a screen there, but like at least we are still more forced to look around rather than be stuck like this? Do you think that's a fair possibility, that it could be better?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm old school, man. I like to bake, you know, I'd rather break big rocks into little rocks and do something like, I'm more of like, you know, Rocky 1, 2, 3 kind of guy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's the things that I think we're losing some of, you know, it's like if you're looking at the UFC, you see these guys coming out of Dagestan, like them, hate them, whatever, you know, their athletes they're growing up different.
Yep.
They don't have the soft life, man. Nope. And the wrestlers, it's nonstop. The way they train is different. And it's not to say they're better. It's just like, if you take boxers as an example, some of the best boxers of all time, most come from really poor means, you know, and it's kind of like, going back to Rocky, it's like, I love Rocky, but, you know, it's like that mentality. It's like, dude, you know, you just want to, the thing that I love is the human spirit. And when you're doing it, when you're posting stuff on Instagram, you're taking a snapshot of you're fabricating some things to make yourself appear, you know, oh, this is the best angle and things. And that fear of missing out is impacting kids like unprecedented rate. And kids are getting depressed and anxiety at like such a young age. I'm like, dude, that you're getting anxiety over that? Like, this person has $100 million plane, I'm poor. And it's like, well, even like you take one influencer, they work their ass off. They don't see the behind the scenes grind. Yeah. And that's the part that's missing out with the generation that's grown up. There's a grind to it, man.
Yes.
You can achieve anything in this country that you want. You just got to get the fuck after it and apply your brain and willpower and be resilient and never fucking give up, and you will accomplish that goal. 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
But that's not what is being demonstrated on social media. It's fabric. A lot of the stuff's not. They're not seeing the behind the scenes of, like, you take somebody like The Rock. It's like,
Oh, the work that goes into it. Yeah.
like him or hate him. It's like that dude's probably fucking grinding.
He's grinding.
He's probably getting up at 4 a.m. He's probably hitting the fucking gym for 2 or 3 hours. He's probably studying. He's probably honing his skills in his craft. And
good for him too, because it's hard to do that the more you get, right? Like there's I think it's Marvin Hagler who said it, the fighter. He's like, it's real hard to get up and train for a fight at 4 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk pajamas.
Yeah, it's like the Conor McGregor, man.
Yeah.
Like once you hit that level of success, and I feel like generationally, a lot of people have good comfort needs. They're like, man, I grew up poor. I'm like, you have an iPhone, dude. Like, it's not the same level of poor when I was in North Africa and I would pass this lady every day to give her food and water. She had no fucking clothes, standing in a mud puddle, and literally for 3 days in the same fucking mud puddle. I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's just mind blowing. Like that, no stitch of clothing. That's a whole nother, you have 10 TVs in your house and you think you're fucking poor. It's like,
it's not, I remember my friend John Borick in episode 57 had a great takeaway about the change in the mentality of society. He said, when I was a kid, if you pulled up as a teenager next to a Ferrari, your thought was, damn, that's an awesome car. I wonder what that guy did to get that. He said, now when kids pull up next to that car, they go, damn, that's an awesome car. Why don't I have that?
Yeah.
Right? It's like people, one of the things about social media that sucks is people, like you were saying, they only see the end result or the good things, and they also don't see the work that goes in for so many people to sacrifice and toil for years to be able to get somewhere. And so they have this assumption that, like, especially when they're living in a world where one flick and they get their next post, meaning they get their hit of dopamine, like, oh, that's how my career can be too. And that's why you see people jumping around careers, changing jobs every 5 months and shit.
I think the average was 5. And it's like what I tell kids growing up. I'm like, hey, man, it's going to take you a minute to figure out.
Yeah.
My biggest kind of, I guess, my physical body's probably like 300 years old at this point, beat the hell up, right? Like a broken down Impala. But I'm kind of fast forwarding in life to have a little bit, looking at things from a different optic, with the situation that I'm in. And it's kind of cool because, again, it's perception. Everything's about perception's reality. And the way that I look at it is I'm like, oh no, woe is me. I look at it as it's an opportunity. The opportunity for me when I'm talking to these young kids, I'm like, I'm going to lose my train of thought on this. But like, if you want something, you just got to go get it.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.